The journey of the umbrella Sicon Financials modules. And these are the ones that we're going to attempt to cover a little bit today. Audit log, cash flow, contracts, enhancement pack, intercompany and fixed assets. And our journey today will start with intercompany. So let's just have a little look at the concept of each of these. As you hover over them within the journey of the umbrella, you'll see audit log ultimately is capitalizing on what Sage already does in its audit trail on the transactional side of things, and layers on top of that all of the ability for you to be able to track changes to fields in core modules, such as your nominals and your sales and your purchase and your cash book. And there's even some functionality around auditing some of the fields that we have in the Sicon modules as well. And again, we'll extend that as we go on and as the requirements change. We're then going to look at audit log in conjunction with intercompany. And obviously intercompany is there for a couple of reasons. And we're going to concentrate on one specific one today, which is the ability for your manufacturing company to be able to receive orders from your selling company. So two companies in this particular group, one sells it to the customer, the other manufactures it. And we need to be able to buy that product from the other company in our group. That's an intercompany transaction for us. Of course, intercompany does so much more. So the ability for you to be able to share cost when an invoice comes in across multiple companies. You can also manage multiple companies with different base currencies. There's also the ability for you to be able to move money around in the cash book as well. But again, we're going to use a use case today of raising a sales order in one company, which will automatically create a purchase order in the other and a sales order. So we'll go through that process. We're also going to use part of the enhancement pack in that intercompany process for creating the back-to-back. The enhancement pack has in excess of 90 features. I've got a top 10, but that changes on a week-to-week basis. So my top 10 enhancement pack features this week may be very different to those for next week. So we try and give you an awful lot of this information in the helping user guide. Some of them are quite big. So in the enhancement pack, there is the ability for you to be able to see in the enhancement pack all of the different areas that we cover and some of those enhancements. Look in the sales ledger and you'll see that we've got direct debit integration as part of the enhancement pack. Direct debit integration is a kind of module all in its own right. So we detail that out in the helping user guide, and where they are a little bigger, we will attempt to do webinars for them as well so that you can actually see them. There's actually one waiting to go on for direct debits. So again, you don't necessarily need individual demonstrations of these. It's more about understanding what that feature is and what else they can get with the enhancement pack. Very often people will buy the enhancement pack for a particular reason and then start using some of the other features. But again, we can have a little look at those. We try and detail them out as much as we possibly can. And we're just going to pop ourselves back in to financials again, just so that we can actually see a couple of the other things that we're going to cover today. And that, of course, is going to be contracts and fixed assets. I'm going to talk to you about the relationship between the two of them, which is actually quite clever. And then we'll finish with cash flow. So we're going to start our journey with intercompany. So in here, I have a stock item that we purchase from the other company within my group. The devil is always in the detail with intercompany. So when you set up your companies, understanding what the control accounts are, where it's going to post to in the other companies, but essentially I'm in one company and then creating transactions in other companies without having to open up the other companies. Perfect. Our use case today for intercompany is going to be our ability to be able to sell my stock items. So I'm just going to go into stock control just to show you what I've done in the background. So in my stock list, we have our Sicon super duper umbrella. There it is. And in here, I say the supplier of that item to us is my intercompany control account. Therefore, when I put a sales order on to sell that to my customer, it'll say you buy that on a back-to-back basis from another company within your group. What's going to happen when we do it? So let's just pop ourselves in and make it happen. Quick new sales order. I'm going to sell one of those umbrellas to my customer, Abbey Retail. I'm also going to say that I'd like, once it is manufactured, I'm going to say I'd like it to actually be sent directly to them, not to me, for me to be able to ship it out. Because actually, when Abbey Retail buy it, we're going to add our item in. So I'm going to sell this to my customer. It's my Sicon Super Duper umbrella, which is manufactured by the other company in my group. They would like one of them. I don't have any stock of them. Therefore, I'm going to buy it from the other company in my group. So therefore, I would like a sales order to my customer and a purchase order to the other company in my group off the back of this transaction. So we just say save to that. But before we do that, we're going to say send it directly to the customer. So save that away. In goes my customer order number. And off we go. System now knows that we want to be able to potentially, with the enhancement pack switched on, the ability for us to be able to create a back-to-back purchase order for this sales order. I'm going to say yes to that. And when that feature pops up on the screen, so you'll see that actually the supplier of this item is the other company in my group, company B in this case. So we're buying our super duper umbrella from them. They're going to manufacture it for us, and then they're going to send it out the door directly to our customer. We buy it from them for £50. We're happy with that. And as you can see, because I'm sending direct to customer, that's what's going to appear on their transaction. So we're going to say, yep, go on then, create me a purchase order. Supplier for this order is an intercompany control account, exactly what we're expecting from the intercompany module. So we say yes to that, go ahead, do it. Confirm the process. And we now have a sales order created in company B. Purchase orders created successfully. And our transaction that is sitting inside of company A, we're just going to pop ourselves in and have a little look at it. You'll see our transaction where we're sending this out to our customer at Abbey Retail will have a number of transactions that sits behind it. So in here, as you can see, my back-to-back will give me the other corresponding transactions which have now happened. So I have my sales order in company A to sell it to my customer, my purchase order in company A to buy it from the other company within my group, and the other company within my group, which is company B, have now got a sales order. So they will be able to see that audit trail as well on their side. You'll also notice in here that on that sales order that now exists in company B, when I dispatch it directly to my customer from company A, it will then automatically update this in here to say purchase order's been received, sales order's been sent out. Happy days. That's exactly what we want. One single place for all of those things to happen in the background. And that's today the use case for intercompany with the enhancement pack for back-to-back in one fell swoop. Lots more to intercompany that we can go into, lots more information on the website, on the help and user guides and on the product guide. But that's our first step into intercompany. Because I am in here amending this item, if I was actually going to change, so I'm just going to go in here and edit the sale price of this particular sales order. I'm just going to say, actually, let's increase the price to £150. We'll save that away. And there's a small thing that's happening in the background now. The small thing that's happening in the background for me is that I have told the system that I would like changes to be tracked using Audit Log. So this is where Audit Log comes in. So let's just have a little look at the auditing module. I'm just going to pop myself into the settings just so that you can see where we actually switch on the functionality. So I've said when it's sales order processing, enable auditing, tick 1, but also enable silent tracking. And what that effectively means is that the users will not be disturbed with having to create a reason as to why they've made a change, but we are tracking that change in the background. If we switch that off, then the user will be prompted to put a reason in at that point. This is a good way of me being able to show you where we switch on Audit Log. Again, if you look at the helping user guide, there's a full appendices of all of the fields which we're actually tracking, but it is available in the cash book in Contract Manager, in the nominal ledger, purchase order processing, the price book, purchase ledger, sales order processing, and stock. If you go into each one of these, you can decide whether or not it is going to enable auditing. So if I go into my purchase ledger, you'll see that I haven't enabled auditing for the purchase ledger at all. Use case for this one, in the purchase ledger, if I say enable auditing, and I ask the user to put a reason in as to why they've made a change, then should I change the company bank details on my supplier so that I'm paying my granny instead of paying my supplier, then I'm going to be prompted to put a reason in. So first place where somebody kind of goes, oh, do you know what, maybe I shouldn't do that then. And the second thing is that it will actually track that change and present that change for a ledger sign off. It isn't an approval that's going to prevent the change from taking place. The change will take place. But next time we run our suggested payment run, as an example, we can check the ledger sign off to see whether or not there's been any changes to bank account details since the last time we did our suggested payments. And it will keep the original values and the current values. So looking at my sales order, let's just pop ourselves in and either amend it or view it, either will do. And having changed the line detail to give myself a different unit price, if I go view changes, that will actually show me at header level what's happening. And if I go into the line detail, we can actually see where we've changed the price from £100 to £150, and it was Michelle that did it on this date at this time, and it now appears in my ledger sign off. You can't sign off your own changes, so that's your kind of audit, and the auditors kind of love everything about it. So back into auditing, back into my ledger sign off, and you'll see that we've got a stack of changes which have taken place, who's done them, and then we get the opportunity to say, yes, I'd like to sign them off. I can go into the module and say, just show me all the ones which have taken place in the purchase ledger, all the ones which have taken place in sales order processing, and sign them off accordingly. Okay, perfect. So that's audit log. So lots of different reasons why you might deploy it, but like I say, kind of extends what Sage does naturally with the audit trail on a transactional basis and gives us the more operational changes that we need to track and change, and also makes us compliant. So that's intercompany and audit log. So let's imagine that we are actually now going to have our umbrella that has a service contract behind it. Later on in our journey, we will cover service completely. So we will actually see the full service solution. But regardless of that, if we don't send an engineer out on site, but we do cover it via a maintenance contract, and we do something in here, the two things that are going to happen with contracts, this is Contract Manager that we're now looking at, the two things that that's going to specifically do is manage the repeat billing of that revenue and also potentially manage the deferred income of that revenue. Many of us as organisations will manage deferred income outside of the financial system because it doesn't lend itself well to be able to manage deferred income. So it ends up on a spreadsheet where once a month we go back into that spreadsheet and then we go in and post it accordingly. So we take £1,200 today, but actually we can't recognise that revenue until we've provided the service. So that's what Contracts is going to do for me. I've created a stock item, a serviceable item called the Umbrella Service Contract, and I'm just going to sell it to my customer. So I'm just going to pop myself into sales order processing and again into my sales order list. We're going to put a quick new order on. Again, devil in the detail in the background behind that service stock item will show you all of the postings. And in here, we're going to do everything that we need. We're going to put this on for my customer at Acme. This also shows you another one of the enhancement pack features, which is the customer pop-ups. Wherever they appear, I will show you. So like I say, there's more than 90 of those that could potentially be there. We're just going to go in and add my item. So the first thing that we're going to do is put my super duper umbrella service contract on. And there it is. And because we know that that is a contract, then you'll get these features appearing on the left-hand side of the screen. So we've got our contract analysis codes, contract details, etc. So we're going to sell one of those. And then in my contract details, I'm going to say, yep, unit price. We'll take it as the £1,800. What site is it covering? The start date of my contract will have as being the 1st of November. The duration of my contract is 12 months. The invoice frequency I'm going to keep as once every year because I'm going to manage my deferred income. But you could also use this utility to bill your clients monthly, to bill your clients quarterly, to bill your clients annually, etc., etc. If there's already an existing contract on for the client, then potentially we might want to add to that existing contract, which is exactly what mine's going to do today. Again, any contract line analysis code, so what we'd like to actually appear instead of this. So again, we do this via what we call variables, but actually we are going to go in and add some test for Michelle, just so that you can see that that's now going to appear as my line text. So my analysis codes, make them mandatory, don't make them mandatory, entirely up to you. We've even got CRM popping up in here as well for CRM tasks and cases. And again, we've looked at that journey. Service comes in, manufacturing comes in as well. Like I say, the entire thing, the whole ecosystem talking to each other. But specifically for contracts today, that's my contract line. We're also going to sell them one of the umbrellas. So let's just add that in. So we sell them an umbrella and we also sell them the contract. So let's just have my Sicon Super Duper umbrella. There are lots. This one will do. Got one, can sell it to them. But the significant thing here is that I can actually add that to a piece of equipment. And I can also say that that piece of equipment is attached to my contract. So I'm going to sell them one of these. And again, lots of other things popping up in distribution now, guys. If you've followed this journey, you'll see that we've used this many, many times. So would I like to use the contract price for this order? I'm going to say no. I've got a reserve and call off for it as well. So I'm going to say no to that too. And we're just going to follow our little journey through. One more time, back into our contract. And as you can see, this particular item is our contract, whereas in actual fact, I've chosen the wrong umbrella, guys. You just can't get the staff these days. I'm just going to go in and add an additional item in here. So I'm going to add one more. So my standard umbrella isn't going to become a piece of equipment. I haven't said it's a serviceable piece of equipment. So let's do it one more time. It's the Sicon Super Duper umbrella. So let's just put my Super Duper umbrella in instead. This time, we will be able to go in and say yes to that one. And in service, this is exactly what I wanted to be able to see, which is the ability for us to be able to connect this piece of equipment to our contract. So we can say it's a non-contract piece of equipment. We want to associate it to an existing contract line or associate it with a contract line on this sales order, which is exactly what I'd like to do. So there's my line, and we're just going to say save to that. And again, all of the standard things that I've got switched on. So despite the fact that we're selling them 2 umbrellas, the one that I'm most interested in is that piece of equipment that needs to be attached to my contract. Okay, so let's just go in and say save to all of this. We'll do all the normal standard things that you would normally do. I'm not going to create a back-to-back order for this particular one. We are going to go in and we're going to have our sales order 6641. Off the back of that sales order, and again, we will cover service in more detail a little later on, but off the back of that, that will create an equipment record, potentially a project. And as you can see, cash flow is now kicking in. So the document value has now changed. And what it's basically saying to me is you've got your cash flow forecast open at the moment and things are about to change. So would you like to update the cash flow forecast? So for the purpose of today's exercise, I'm just going to say no. Quite a clever little feature. This is where service kicks in, and that's obviously giving me the ability to be able to create that piece of equipment under warranty and under contract, which is pending. I'm just going to say close to that. So now we've got all of our items together. What we really want to do is just use Sicon documents to create all of that. So again, we're just literally pushing everything together now, guys. first things first, let's just go in and print my order acknowledgement, because that's something else that I've got switched on. I'm just going to acknowledge it. And there it is. Use the Sicon Documents button to email and archive it, and off it goes. So again, mine's popping into my drafts. The reason why I quite like to show this one is because I have a contract line on my sales order. And that contract line, I'm able to attach documentation to it, which could be a copy of the service contract, which all will automatically go out with my sales order acknowledgement for both sets of umbrellas and my service contract. So that's now been produced. All of the appropriate documentation is now sitting in the background. My sales order itself can now be dispatched. So we're going to dispatch our items out. There they are, quantity to dispatch. Let's just make sure that we're doing the right one. That's fine. And we'll have one of those as well. And off we go and dispatch it. Choose the appropriate serial number. In actual fact, let's choose one that's actually sitting in a proper bin, because of course we could use barcoding and warehousing to be able to dispatch it. And off we go and dispatch our items. We could obviously choose the ability to be able to dispatch an invoice, but I'm going to take you through the entire process because that's exactly what we need to be able to achieve. Okay, now having dispatched them, they're now going to produce my invoice for everything. So we're just going to say, yes, I'd like to print my invoice. And there it is. And again, use Sicon Documents to email and archive it out. I'm just going to hit the print button just for the purpose of today's exercise, just so that we're into the next process, which is the ability for us to be able to post. And at the point of posting, this is where contracts will do exactly that and pick up the fact that that needs to be, number one, a contract line. Number two, the deferred income needs to be picked up. And number three, give us the ability to do repeat billing in the future. Perfect. Okay, so it's exactly what we want to be able to achieve. So let's just pop ourselves in and do our posting. Again, one more time. And we go and post. And at this point, not only will it show me my contract line, but it will also show me all of the contract lines which we would be potentially pushing forward. So my invoices and credits have been posted successfully, and the contract line detail, there it is for my service contract, for my umbrella service contract, has now been created as an additional item, line number 53 against contract number 19. So we're going to go in and process that. And then we're going to see when we go into contracts, how simple that process is for people to then be able to manage the deferred income and for them to be able to go in and manage the repeat billing of that in the future. So into Sicon Contracts and into my contract list, where we have, of course, many, many contracts. And contract number 19 is sitting down here. So let's just open that up. So total amount of contract value for all of the contract lines. And as you can see, today we have our sales order. And on that sales order, there is a contract line. And we've asked the system to manage that as deferred income. So when I go in to view my deferred postings, you'll see that it details out that £1,800 to each monthly amount governed by the number of days within that month. So that our total will obviously add up to the £1,800. And the principle is month 1 will go to the P&L. Months 2 through to 12 will then go and sit on the balance sheet, where they will sit until you are ready to process them. Ultimately meaning that on a monthly basis, I'm not just looking at an individual posting. I'm looking at all of my contract value that's now sitting in the balance sheet and moving it over into the P&L in one utility that we provide for you inside of contracts. I'll show you that in just a second. but that's where my deferred income sits. I can, if I needed to, amend this as standard. We do it by number of days within the month, but if I go in and edit the transactions, you can see that you can actually, so long as it adds up to £1,800, you can of course go in and adjust the values accordingly. The other thing that Contract Manager is obviously doing is managing that line and its repeat billing for us. So if we just go into the lines, we should see line number 53. 53 lines on a single contract. Not all of them are visible here. That's because many of them will have expired. They might have been cancelled. They might be pending. They might have been suspended. So it's one single place to be able to manage all of those things. Our contract down here, if we look at the equipment tab, despite the fact that I chose my standard umbrella originally, that particular one is a piece of equipment which I've now said is connected to that contract and service. So we're charging our customer £1,800 a year to be able to go out and service a piece of equipment. That piece of equipment is then attached. This also brings me quite nicely into another one of the modules that we're going to look at today, which is fixed assets. Because actually, on a contract, I might not be covering a piece of equipment that I've sold to the customer, which now becomes their asset. It might be our asset. Our asset, like a coffee machine, that goes out on long-term contract hire effectively, not to be confused with hire as it used to be. This is all about understanding that your asset that could be with your customer for 18 months is still effectively owned by you, but you go out and service it and they pay you for that privilege under contract. So my Sicon Super Duper umbrella was something that I sold to the customer. It's now theirs, it's their asset. Whereas if it's our asset, we can use our fixed asset module to bring our assets into the equipment record as well. So again, as you can see in here, if I just come out of here and I add another item, so a contract that covers multiple pieces of equipment, one thing that I've sold them, and another thing that's sitting in our asset register, our frothy coffee machine, our espresso machines. So as you can see, I'm just going to say, yep, use that asset. And as you can see, and here it says this fixed asset is already linked to another equipment record. Please use or amend the existing equipment record. And this is really where it gives you that opportunity of association of an asset, but it doesn't duplicate that. And that's what that warning is showing you here. So we're not obviously going to choose that one. We're going to choose another one of our assets. Let's have a little look at our Zephyr. So again, adding your piece of equipment in against your contract so that you can see what we're covering effectively. So we're just going to say save to that. So now we've got two pieces of equipment, one which we've sold, one which is ours. We're going to go back in and look at fixed assets in just a second. Let's just show you what else is happening inside of contracts, because if we just go in and edit our contract line, you can see the management of this contract over time. So I'm going to be able to create a forecast so that I can see my contract revenue over a period of years. I'm also going to be able to manage the contract throughout its life cycle. Are they renewing? Are they not renewing? Has it been confirmed as a renewal for next year? If it has been confirmed as a renewal for next year, are we going to charge them the same price? Are we going to update it from the price book? Are we going to apply an increase by percentage to it? All of these things can be done individually at line level, or there are utilities for us to be able to look at the renewal prices for next year and do it en masse. So what would it look like if I increased everything by 5%? Or what would it look like if I increased everything by the new updated price book value? So again, one-off credits and one-off changes to my contract throughout its life cycle. I can mark a contract as being at risk, a variety of different things that we're going to be able to manage all the way through. And of course, contracts themselves will have all of the ways in which we've sold it off the back of our sales order. The contract start date, the duration in months, the invoice frequency are all being pulled forward, in my case, from the sales order. But there's nothing to stop you adding a new contract line directly in here. Doesn't have to go through sales order processing. Again, we switch on all of the Sicon documents features, add documents, view documents in here as well. I'm just going to pop ourselves out of here just to actually see what those 3 or 4 things that your users would do on a monthly basis using contracts. Now that we have an entity that we are able to bill against, then in my period end routines, this is where I would do my monthly journal postings for my contracts. In other words, it's going to go away and look at everything that's currently sitting in deferred for October that we should be recognizing and moving from the balance sheet into the P&L. So a list of not just our one, but everything month on month. I can go in and look at the example journal. I can go in and second guess what the contract's actually showing me, but effectively it's going to look at the total amount to defer, the total transferred to date, the transfer to the P&L on this transaction, which is the important one, and this is how much we're going to move over from the balance sheet to the P&L this month. One click of a button to do all of those postings, and that has been done really simply. And then you've got a full history of that. So that's one process that you would run on a monthly basis. Manage your deferred income monthly journal postings. You would also go into your contract processing and you would do your process renewals, generate your sales orders for all of your repeat billing. And both of those things, this one, of course, is going to be looking at contracts which are due to expire and giving us an opportunity to be able to then say, actually, we want to be able to renew that contract. If I do go in to update my renewal prices, that's that utility that I mentioned previously that enables me to go in and calculate the renewal prices and increase them by a particular percentage or use the current price bands. And then I can decide whether or not that's what we would like to apply. So it's the kind of what if scenario and then process it accordingly. So if you're managing thousands of contracts, the system does it particularly well, or hundreds of contracts or tens of contracts. It does it particularly well. Generating my sales orders will look at all of those things which need to be billed in terms of those things which we're going to bill monthly or quarterly or annually. So based on your frequency, it'll then say, right, this is everything that you need to bill. So we're just going to change our date up here and display all of the things that we need to then raise new sales orders for, which we can then consolidate into single invoices potentially. The reason why mine are showing in red is because the lines in red are already overdue. This is why you would do it on a monthly basis rather than in our demo environment where it's showing you things which I should have done. So it will literally roll through the months for me. But if I'm happy that that's what my billing would look like for this month, based on all of those contracts which are sitting there, I'm just going to select them all and process the selected contracts and generate the sales orders, choosing a date that I'd like that to appear on the sales order, and it'll create as many sales orders as it needs to be able to manage that repeat billing for me. And like I say, that doesn't matter whether or not that's annual, quarterly or monthly. So there's all of your new sales orders. And of course, one quick, really easy way of doing this is to then take all of the new sales orders created to send out all of the acknowledgements using Sicon documents with all of the contract terms attached to it. So again, really quick and simple. There's a variety of reports that you can run using contracts. We've got a number of existing reports, but of course, anybody with the skills will be able to write their own reports. Anybody with the skills within the business partner community can write their own reports too. But we think we've done some pretty important stuff in here. And one of them that I particularly like is number one, the ability for us to be able to create our renewal reminders. And the other one that I particularly like is this one here, which is called my contract reconciliation, which is the ability for your customers to be able to see what's sitting in the deferred income over months, what the deferred P&L transactions are over months. But this is the one I particularly like, which sort of summarizes everything into a little dashboard for me of all the deferred income by product, contract value by product, annual contract value by customer, deferred income by customer, and I can even consolidate all of those things together by choosing a customer. So I do my deferred income by customer and product. And it's a great way of just being able to see the breakdown of exactly what's sitting in your accruals and in your contract deferred. So what's outstanding in deferred and what your nominal balance is, what's waiting for postings, and what your variance is. So we could wax lyrical about contracts a fair bit, but off the back of contracts, we introduced you to fixed assets. So what's happening inside of fixed assets? It's still a very robust module. It's still a hot seller for us in terms of extending the functionality that you can't do in standard Sage, that you can't do in standard Sage, even with fixed assets, because our fixed asset module is both a financial tool and a register. And that fixed asset module, as you can see, gives us the ability to be able to not only create an asset that we can depreciate against and we can create forecasts against, that I could potentially go in and revalue or write off, but it will also give me the ability to be able to manage and track that asset. So we're just going to have a look at the difference between my stand-up desk, which is sitting as IT equipment in the category. So let's just have a little look at our fixed asset. So that particular asset, as you can see, is sitting in a category called IT equipment, in a subcategory called display screen, and that will then determine for me by default what the depreciation type is and what the period and expected life is going to be, and how we're going to depreciate, and also where it sits as far as the setup and depreciation posting accounts. There's some additional tabs that we add into fixed assets, which you don't get in any other fixed asset solution for Sage. And they are the ability for you to be able to look at the transaction history. This tab here for my planned preventive maintenance, because I've said it sits in a category of IT equipment, gives me an opportunity to go in and put in an interval for services, for instance, and add those and maintain those. You can also in here associate your invoice to your asset. If this particular asset is being used on a contract, then again, in here in my asset type, it would be a contract asset. You can use the fixed asset utility to be able to take your stock items and issue them to assets, and then issue that asset to your customer. And that asset then becomes a piece of equipment against a contract line. And that contract line is off the back of something that we have sold to our customer as a result of being able to manufacture it. And we manufactured it because we were instructed to do so by the selling company within our group via an intercompany transaction on a back-to-back order using enhancement pack. So that whole process is all interconnected. And we've used a lot of Sicon documents throughout. Just back into my fixed asset one more time, because the difference between this one here, just giving me an additional tab for planned preventive maintenance. I've got a couple of tabs that's sitting down the end here for, I've called them HP monitoring and tracking, but they are effectively customizable tabs. So you can configure those to actually include as much information as you need to, call them what you like. We think we've covered as much as we need to as far as fixed asset is concerned. But having the ability to create more fields on the fly is very important for some customers, so that they can say, for instance, my HP monitoring, the number of months that it's over, and the tracking date that it's due back, number of miles that it's traveled. They're not a standard out of the box. They're just ones I've created as examples. So that can be done. So as a register, if we just go in and look at a different type, so we're just going to look at our Volvo truck as an example, which sits within my vehicles category. There's even more that we switch on. So our vehicle register will give us things like the registration number, the chassis number. We can look at the next MOT, the next service date. There's even an accident log that you can switch on as well. So using it as that register means that I can also see every time something has changed. So if I change it from one employee to another, take ownership of it, change it from one site to another, we can see all of those changes in my tracking history. However, as a depreciation tool, or indeed as a financial tool, of course, it's going to do all of the normal things that you would expect it to do. So in my period end routines, we can go in and post the depreciation. It's completely integrated into the accounting system manager. So there is additional columns in the accounting system manager to manage our fixed asset module and when the periods are open and when they're closed, so that you can only post depreciation to open periods. If we just go into fixed assets, you can see that I can go in and dispose of an asset and I can revalue an asset. Disposing of a fixed asset will give me a list of things that I want to be able to dispose of. I can either write them off or sell them. Revaluing a fixed asset will also give me the ability to do that, but it'll do it in a really nice, pretty little wizard way, allowing me to be able to go in and choose my asset, look at the nominal postings, amend the valuation amounts, and then regenerate the forecast on the back of that. Again, your users then have a much easier way of being able to process. So these nominals are obviously coming from the settings, and there's a stack of settings that sit in the background there to determine how we're going to do things. But the most significant thing when you take on a client with fixed assets is they've probably got assets already. And therefore, within our utilities, you of course have the ability to be able to import those assets via CSV. And this is where I mentioned earlier on that you can issue the stock to fixed assets. But we're now going to just pop you into cash flow just so you can see what the output of cash flow is intended to be. In my cash flow, I do not have currently in this particular version, I've said run it without commercials. In other words, I don't want to see sales orders and I don't want to see purchase orders. But I've made this sound really simplistic. There is a more extensive demonstration available on the Sicon website for cash flow. But in reality, we're literally taking all of the data from Sage and presenting it into one place for your users to be able to see exactly what that looks like, what my bank position is, what my sales position is, what my purchase position is, and therefore what my cash flow looks like on a weekly or monthly basis. It can also be used as some kind of credit control tool. So in my sales ledger, you can see that I've got for Abbey Retail a big fat balance sitting there, which we're awaiting. It is overdue. So each of these invoices effectively are overdue. If I chase that, I can literally pick it up and move it out in time to the point where my customer says they're going to pay. The net effect of that is that it will change not the due date, but the forecast date for that item. And that will be visible against the transaction inside of the ledger as well. So as you can see, as I hover over it, that little indicator on the screen shows me that this transaction has a custom forecast date. You'll be able to see what all of these things mean just by clicking on this little key, which is quite a nice little thing to look at. So anywhere where you've got transactions with a custom forecast date, the little post-it note means there's a memo to look at. Green flag for trader has unallocated receipts. Orange flag for trader has unallocated payments. Blue flag for transaction has a query flag. And red flag for transaction is awaiting authorization. And we're also able to mark things where the transaction is a bad debt too. And then we can run our forecast to include or exclude our bad debts. A nice little utility to be able to achieve that. I'm just going to pop myself in to actually look at that transaction. So when I go in and right click on it, despite the fact that we are in one single environment, I can navigate all the way back to all of the standard Sage screens that I need to be able to see. I want to be able to go in and view that transaction. So again, one single place. Unlike an Excel spreadsheet, which is effectively not going to give me the underlying detail, this gives me one utility to be able to see everything in a summary and then be able to drill into the detail. And this is where you'll see that custom forecast date appearing against the customer transaction inquiry screen accordingly. It doesn't care about the due date anymore as far as the cash flow is concerned, but we don't want to lose sight of what it should have been and what Sage thinks it should have been. What we are interested in is when it's actually going to hit our forecast, which we've now got a custom forecast date for. And I can do it from both ways. So I can do it inside of the cash flow, or I can do it inside of transaction inquiry screen for that particular item and amend the forecast date accordingly. And of course, the summary of all of the information that we have in standard Sage is there for me to be able to see. I can export this out to Excel if we want to manipulate it further, but in reality, what we do want to be able to also see potentially is those things that we might want to add in, which aren't necessarily standard Sage, that we might want to budget for. So I've got something down here called ad hoc costs. It might be for things like rent or your salary bill, so that you can see how that's going to affect your cash flow over time. Should we then have a budget for what that is, it will then appear in my cash flow. And then if we drill into that, as you can see, each of those periods becomes available to me. But again, I can go in and I can view my nominal account or amend the nominal account. So let's just go in and amend it, just so you can see that this is one which I've added in as an ad hoc entry into my cash flow. And in here, against the nominal account, I should be able to see my forecasted budget, and I can also mark it as having been paid. If this was something that I pay or something that I receive, and I'm putting a transaction directly in against that particular nominal, it would then warn me that there is a budget and therefore cash flow entry for that amount, and invite you to be able to amend your forecast accordingly.